Welcome to the Town of Edgewood Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The time is 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started. Start with a roll call. Commissioner Lee? Here. Commissioner Hubbards?
Present.
Commissioner Felton?
Here.
Lorenzo's here. We've got a full quorum, so we can go ahead and do business. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda itself. Give you guys a chance to look at that and see if there are any changes. Any changes?
No.
Okay.
No changes tonight. We've got a lot of guests, so.
I move we approve the agenda as written.
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made to approve the agenda as written. And second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting, drafted Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes for April 2nd, 2018. Give you guys a chance to look at that, and I'll entertain a motion.
Chairman, there was a correction that was brought to my attention on the voting on our subdivision that we heard. I listed Commissioner Lee twice and left out Commissioner Felton, so I fixed that on the one that you'll sign.
Okay. So whenever you guys are ready, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Okay?
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded that we approve the minutes, drafted Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes for April 2nd with the modifications that was mentioned. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and the ayes have it. Next item on the agenda is the finding of facts and conclusion of law. This is for the application of Donna and Julia Wood for the subdivision 1 lot into 4 15 acres at northeast 1, well, blah, 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 so.
It's a lot.
It is. So we have, you have a copy of the findings and facts. We'll give you guys a chance to look at that. And with that one, we just do just a regular vote.
Right.
Okay. Give you guys a chance to look at it and see if there are any adjustments or changes.
I move we approve the facts and findings
Okay.
for Don and Julia Wood subdivision.
Second.
Okay, a motion's been made and seconded to approve the findings and facts for Don and Julia Wood. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Next item on the agenda is a discussion item, and this is going to be changes to R1, R2, and R5 secondary quarters. Okay, Steph, you want to go ahead and start us off?
Yes. So if you guys, we've got some guests here that are I said we've got the heavy hitters here tonight. So if you guys could go around and just introduce yourself and say who you're with.
I'm Eugene Bassett, BC Bassett Construction.
Hi, I'm Sandra Geiser with the Mid-Region Council of Governments.
Maida Rubin with the Mid-Region Council of Governments.
Levi Cole with the New Mexico Environment Department, Environmental Health Bureau, Staff Manager.
I'm John Roderick with the New Mexico Environment Department, Environmental Health Bureau. I'm the District Manager.
Mike Lenz, Construction Industries Division, General Building Inspector.
Thank you guys for coming. So the reason behind inviting all of them here tonight is because of what was brought to our attention from a town council member that what we had all discussed and decided and unanimously passed wasn't quite what they wanted to see, or a little concerned about it. So everything that we discussed, I wanted to just get expert opinions on what we saw, especially where septic is concerned. I wanted Mr. Cog here so they could let us know if what we were doing, you know, may or may not be right or wrong, the way we're wording things. So what our worry is, and you guys, I emailed you and said to have some questions ready, but basically what I talked to most of you about is when it comes to a septic system, what are the problems that will arise if we've got, you know, a septic system that's already there, it's on a lot that say is a little less than an acre, and they want to have a secondary corridor there, say a bedroom, a kitchen, a bathroom, and a washer and dryer.
Okay, if I may address that, to start off, let me give you kind of a general overview of how we size septic systems and what is entailed with that. The systems are sized based on the number of bedrooms in the dwelling, okay? And you can break that down and it actually figures out to 2 people in the first bedroom, 2 people in the second bedroom, 1 in the third bedroom for a 3-bedroom, gives you a total design flow of 375 gallons. So, and then we have to look at lot size to determine what the maximum flow is that they could have on that lot. Now, by regulation, you're limited to a maximum of 500 gallons per acre, okay? And that's a daily design flow. All right, so a smaller lot, you're going to have a lower maximum flow. The other things that factor into the sizing of the system are the usage. Obviously, there's a different usage if you have an industrial type use, a restaurant, something of this nature versus a residential home. The strength of the waste changes. The individual lot characteristics, i.e. the slope of the ground, the type of soil you're dealing with, or lack of soil, depending on where you're at in the state, impact the ability to apply the liquid waste, as we call it, the effluent, on that lot. And so, to jump ahead to what it looks like based on what we've been sent, the question is, if there's an existing system, can you add something else to it? The answer would be no, unless you happen to have been lucky enough to oversize the system in the first place. Now, especially when you're talking about what you mentioned, which is a dwelling that has sleeping quarters, a bathroom, kitchen, stuff, you're talking about a house, okay? And the house then gets sized toward the, you know, based on the regulations and depending on bedrooms. For example, a 1-bedroom home is 150 gallons per day additional design flow. The odds are the existing systems are not going to be designed for that, and if these are older existing systems, then they, even though they were built to the regulations, are substantially undersized compared to what we now require, okay? And so if you start adding on to those, in addition to violating the permit that they're operating under, if they have one, the system will fail. It's not designed to handle the amount of flow that you're giving to it. And when I say fail, you know, if you're in sandy soil, it may not start backing up. But the system is designed with a tank and a drain field. And the initial treatment of the liquid waste occurs in the tank. And if you have too much flow going in, it short circuits the system and sends the effluent into the drain field before the treatment that takes place in the tank has occurred. And we're talking about bacteria breaking things down. Your drain field is sized to accept the flow at a certain rate. And when we say 375 gallons per day design flow, if you're in good soil, fairly sandy, good soil, your drain field is going to be designed to handle twice that flow. So 2 times 375, it's a 750 square foot drain field. And I won't go into the details of how you design that at this point. But if you start pushing more water into that drain field than it's designed to handle, then it is either going to ultimately kill the drain field and mean it has to be replaced, or if you have an extremely sandy soil, again, you begin to push more water in and you short circuit it, and the water's not being cleaned up by the soil as it moves through it, which creates environmental issues all the way around. Now, anytime you're talking about a separate dwelling on a property, this is what you're going to run into. And the sizing isn't going to make any difference whether they're tying into the same system or whether they're putting a completely separate system in. Your tank size changes, your drain field size changes. And those may be restricted by lot size. They could be restricted by other issues such as setbacks to lot lines, to structures, to other systems. I don't know in this area if we're dealing with any types of water wells, but that impacts it as well. You have to maintain setbacks. And so, as I was mentioning to you folks before we started, the reality is that there is no cut and paste, cookie cutter way to handle these systems. They have to be evaluated and determined what's doable or not on a case-by-case basis. And that being said, in reading through some of the comments and things, you know, the concern is where it talks about these systems being able to hook up to share the primary dwelling septic system. I think the reality is, in some cases it may be doable, in other cases it may not. You know, and we're talking conventional systems. Now you can get into advanced treatment units and other types of disposal systems where you can increase the flow on a lot, but you also significantly increase the costs. Okay. As a rule, generally when we deal with different jurisdictions and they're talking about this, what we recommend to them is that they stipulate in their zoning code that in order for this to happen, all dwellings on a property must comply with our regulations. And then, you know, you simply have to require them to go get a permit to construct this thing and put it in before you allow the construction of the secondary dwelling or whatever, and it's either doable or it's not, based on, you know, on when they come to us with a permit application, and we can evaluate that individual property. You know, there is somewhat of a difference. You know, if you're adding a bedroom to the structure, that bedroom again increases design flow because we're making the assumption there's going to be people in a bedroom, right? Otherwise you wouldn't be adding it. And so the numbers that we're talking about encompass laundry, bathroom, showers, kitchen, all of that, based on those individuals.
So, is there ever an instance that 2 septic tanks are allowed on a property, and how big would that property need to be if it was allowed?
Well, actually, it's done quite often. And again, there's no minimum maximum lot size. The regulation's specific in that for a conventional septic system, which is a tank and a drain field, you know, typically gravity fed, you have to have a minimum of 3/4 of an acre, okay? With a 1 acre lot, you're locked into a maximum of 500 gallons per day design flow, okay? And it varies based on how big the actual lot is, all right? And so, yeah, dual tanks are put in quite often. We have had systems where whenever they're replacing an existing system and the way the house was plumbed, there's no way to connect the 2 tanks, both sides of the house, so they wind up with 2 tanks going to a shared drain field. We've had dual drain fields and dual tanks. Again, it's on a case-by-case basis, and we have to evaluate what they're proposing and make sure that it meets the regulations, that the sizing is appropriate before we can sign off on it.
So the 1 acre is basically, is like your rule of thumb for like 3 bedrooms, the 375.
No, the 3/4 acre.
I mean, that's the size of the lot.
Right,
But
for a 3-bedroom.
but that flow of 375 gallons per day is like for a 3-bedroom house?
Right.
Around that?
Right.
So if you added another bedroom at the 150 gallons per day, then you're at 525, so you've exceeded that 500
Right.
limit. So you'd have to go to a bigger lot size to be able to put in another one or increase the size of the existing
Correct.
septic to get the bigger leach field.
Yeah, you're not gonna be allowed to exceed the maximum of 500 gallons
Right,
per acre.
yeah.
So depending on what's there, you may or may not be
That's
able
your
to expand
threshold.
it.
Yeah.
You know, the difference is an attached bedroom, if, let's say you're at 3 bedrooms and you go to an attached bedroom, all right? Now you're at four bedrooms, so your design flow goes to 440 gallons
Okay.
per day, okay? But if you have 3 bedrooms and then you have this unattached structure that's effectively a house,
Right,
now you're talking an additional 150 gallons. So the bedroom by itself attached isn't as much as it's gonna be for a house, because the house is factoring in the bedroom, but in that number is wrapped up the bathroom, the showers, washer, dryer.
you're not adding
everything.
another well, of course, but you permit by bedrooms, not by bathrooms.
Right, not by bathrooms,
Right.
but the assumption is that it's a 1-bedroom dwelling,
Yeah, right,
assuming 2 people minimum, so
Right.
you're looking at 150 gallons a day, so it's not apples to apples. That's what people
Right.
don't
right.
understand.
So if someone just wanted to add another 4th bedroom onto their house, they could probably work it in with the existing system.
But they would have to, when they change the design flow, they would have to expand the system
Yeah,
to accommodate.
but it
that.
wouldn't be over 500.
No.
Right, okay.
You can add a 4th bedroom as long as it's an acre. You can't add it when it's 3/4 of an acre.
Right.
I think
Okay, so when you have the 4th bedroom, okay, on 3/4 of an acre, you gotta put advanced treatment in there for nitrogen loading.
Okay.
Okay, when you go to the 4th bedroom on an acre, you have to get a modification permit, okay? You can keep the septic tank in there if it's in good shape, but you gotta get a modification and add on to the drain field.
I think the minimum lot size for a 4-bedroom is .88, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
0.88. So, Mr. Bassett, you were telling me the other day in the office that the area that we've zoned R5, that a lot of those septics over there are smaller septics.
Right, and so most of that are old, okay? So if there are 3 bedrooms, you add a 4th bedroom on there, you could probably get by with the tank, but you gotta get a modification permit to modify the drain field to bring it up to today's standards, and modify it.
Okay. Do you guys have some questions
I
on that?
have a question. Going to a 3rd dimension, what is the impact of the depth of the vadosome, especially in Edgewood area, on these numbers of 150 gallons, 500 gallons a day? There's some areas up by us that very rocky, very short vadosome. So are there some general requirements for that, even on 1 acre?
Well, there are. I mean, one of the requirements to be able to have again, we'll go at it from the conventional system standpoint. You have to have a minimum of 4 foot of good soil below the bottom of the drain field. Okay, so if your drain field's 4 feet into the ground, you've got to have another 4 foot of good soil below it, and in addition to the sides. If you're on solid rock, you know, I have seen people get approved to basically blast out and build what I consider a bathtub. It's guaranteed it's gonna fail. Typically what we see with those is either an elevated drain field or a mound type system, or there's some other alternative disposal systems that you can put in with, when you have shallow soil, shallow groundwater, any of those types of things. But that's what I'm talking about. The site conditions individually dictate what can and can't be done on that site.
But it would seem that that would even push harder to try to define the fourth bedroom on a 1 acre place.
Yeah.
Because you better have some good Vado zone, or you're gonna have swimming pools.
Well, see, and that's the issue. If you happen to have a high clay content soil, the size of your drain field is factored by 5.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about an extremely large drain field, and on a 4-bedroom, that typically gets you into a low-pressure dosing, low-pressure piping situation because of the size of this thing. And it's based on the fact that the soil's just not going to accept the water as quickly, you know. There's always a way to put a system in. The question is whether you've got the space and you're willing to spend the money to do it. You know, when you start getting into advanced treatment systems, and Mr. Bassett does these kinds of systems and does a lot of the different alternative methods, he can speak more to the cost, but it's substantially more than a conventional system, and it then entails maintenance contracts and sampling and long-term costs over the life of the system.
So bottom line is the acreage of 1.88 is only, you have one system on that amount of land, you couldn't put 2 systems.
On 1.88 acres?
0.88.
0.88, I meant 0.88, yeah.
Well, again, it depends on how big the dwellings are that are associated with those systems.
Before you
okay?
start.
Right. You know, and if they're 2 separate houses, then they're sized differently than one larger home. But again, it's an there's no cookie cutter method to say, this is it. That's why we require each individual who's wanting to put in a liquid waste system to apply for a permit that goes through the review process to determine whether they can do it, whether they apply directly or they have a contractor do it for them.
So in terms of adding a dwelling or an attachment, it's just a matter of, in the regulations, you have something that says it has to be permitted, right? So if it's permitted, then you go through the checks and all that kind of stuff to see if it's doable or not. So in that aspect, what were the concerns that council had as it relates to the septic? Was there a concern as it relates to what we have written for the septic stuff?
The concern was not communicated clearly, other than upset that R5 wasn't going to be allowed to have secondary quarters. Before we move on, Mr. Lentz, I was going to have you talk about how there's a certain way that you have to add on to a manufactured home. What I learned years ago, and I don't know if this is true, but I wanted to see if it is, because we talked about this during our meeting. There's a certain way that you have to build on to a manufactured home if somebody was going to build on, say, secondary quarters onto it.
Right, so for manufactured housing, it's actually a federal regulation that if you're gonna, manufactured housing is under a mobile home or manufactured housing division. If you do an addition onto manufactured housing, it falls under the International Residential Code, and general building handles that part of it, the permitting and inspections. But the requirement is that there has to be a 2-inch separation, that the addition cannot be directly attached to a manufactured home. If it's a modulars are built under the IRC standard, and you are allowed to attach. But if it's manufactured housing, you need to maintain a separate or a separation of at least 2 inches. And the thought behind that is that that unit, that manufactured home, could be taken out without a complete demolition of the addition. And that pertains to both the wall systems and the roof system. So sometimes the roofs take some creativity, I guess you could say, to make that work right, because the only thing allowed to connect to the manufactured home would be the roofing membrane itself, so you're watertight, but the structure has to be maintained separately. And if you get into a duplex situation, then you're also going to be, where you're going to have more than one dwelling unit, which would be your kitchen, sanitary, bedrooms. Then you're going to be required to have fire separation between those units. And it would, no different than when you build a house and you have your garage and your dwelling, you need a fire separation between those two. And so the same thing would apply to a two-family or duplex situation. You would need a 1 hour fire separation.
Would you, so if you added, if you wanted to add to a manufactured home, you have the 2-inch separation, does that mean all the utilities have to be separate because you can't connect to the original home?
You'd have the way to disconnect.
Mm-hmm. You couldn't tie into the existing?
You could tie in, but it would have to be a connection and you could disconnect
okay.
and get it right.
Okay, so it could be done.
Yeah.
You guys have some more questions?
So based off of your comments as it relates to the separation that has to happen, would that mean that if part of our language that we had in here is saying that you have to have an attached apartment, so that would be in violation of, that wouldn't kind of go with a mobile home, because you really can't do that attachment by law.
If it's under manufactured housing, you would not be able to directly attach to that manufactured home.
But you said the roof membrane could be?
Right, because you need to have a watertight roof.
Right.
So your shingles or metal roofing, that's allowed to be attached. It's the structure.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman? Can
Sir.
I ask, what led all of you to come to the idea of perhaps not having secondary quarters like in R5?
Probably because of the smaller lots, worried about the septic system not being able to hold them. R5 in this area that has been zoned R5, a lot of the lots are 1 acre and smaller.
Have you had anybody come in and try to get a secondary quarter into a place like that?
Yes.
What has that been?
They wanted to put a whole second house, a second manufactured home for a mother-in-law.
You call it a secondary quarter?
Yes,
On an R5 lot?
on an R5 lot.
Did they propose a second septic system or anything?
No, they were gonna share the one, and I discouraged them. I said, I don't think we can do that, but let me look into more digging, and then they never came back in. And that's when we started looking at this, and then looking at the language and how it was kind of contradicting itself. And we just started looking at it and thinking, I don't think that those smaller lots are gonna be able to have secondary quarters on them, because, you know, the extended leach line that they would need.
And so Sandy, what does the law say? You can't prohibit somebody from having secondary quarters?
Well, state statute talks about allowing multi-generational structures.
It
right?
enables it.
It enables it. But it doesn't say, what does it say? It says up to 2 kitchens, correct?
Up to, which makes it ambiguous.
Yeah.
Because
Up to 2?
Kitchens.
that kind of says 1 or 2.
1 or 2. And,
So a
yeah.
lot of municipalities don't allow secondary dwelling units.
Or if they do, they allow 1 kitchen, right?
So they would add on a bedroom, not a kitchen.
And maybe a
That's-
bathroom.
Yeah.
That's the way they call it, a studio, like it's an extension of the house, but it's not intended for a separate dwelling unit. So we have a lot of illegal secondary dwelling units where it was just a studio with a bathroom, but then you bring in a hot plate or something, which is not the desired outcome.
But the state statute does not address the sewer system, or the septic system.
Not under that multi-generational statute.
So does that leave it to Edgewood to make a rule on that?
Yeah. Well, you are a municipality, you know.
I'm a municipality.
Yeah, yeah. The concern that Maine and I have been reading through it is, state statute also says you can't look at manufactured housing differently than stick-built homes. That you can't discriminate between the two. They're considered, you have to allow them in your R1, R2, R5.
Right.
You can't say, you can control the single ones, mobile homes. You know, you can say they're going to be, we're going to locate those in a mobile home park, or we're not even going to allow them in the community. But a manufactured home is considered a still-built home under the state statutes. And that was our concern was.
We weren't sure how the building of it worked.
Right.
And how the attachment would work, so we wanted you to
Yeah.
check on that.
We were concerned about, is that going to be exclusionary if manufactured homes to add an accessory dwelling unit, if it's going to be more onerous than, a stick-built home where you could add a secondary dwelling unit.
So there would be no problem with having two mobile homes on that one lot as long as they put advanced treatment in there and treated the waste down to a nitrogen level that is acceptable by the state.
If your zoning ordinance allow it. I mean, most residential say one dwelling unit per parcel, whatever size that is, 1 acre, 2 acre, 5 acre. You'd have to change your ordinance to allow. Now, some places have said you can put a secondary dwelling unit on it, but it has to be, limited at a square footage, and you've done that with this one.
Yeah.
If you've got, I've seen them where they've added set percentages up to a certain square footage, like 50% of the primary dwelling not to exceed, 1,000 square feet or something like that. But, that's, once again, you always have to get that septic permit. That's the, until you get hooked up to
Perhaps there should
wastewater.
also be a septic inspection if somebody proposes something like that, so that
Right.
a qualified person can tell them you can do this or you can't do it with what you've got here.
Yeah, a lot of places, a lot of zoning ordinances say you have to have a, environment department, you have to get that permit first.
I'm wondering, so the state law enables it,
Yeah.
and the environment department's likely to stop a lot of it anyway. Does it make sense to have it be a conditional use wherever it's done? I mean, does that,
Maybe so. Maybe we do
does
need to
that
just have
flag
it
it so that
conditional all the
those
way
things go up
across.
for proper permitting?
Since they have to get it doesn't matter if we had it in R5, they have to get a
Yeah.
septic
So it's not,
approval
it's not a
anyway.
permissive use
Right.
anywhere, it's always a conditional use.
That doesn't get us in trouble. We can just still put it under conditional R1, R2, and R5.
If you allow it for manufactured homes and.
Right.
Sure.
Well, and then that's something that we'd have to work with they would have to work with CID. Same thing, that they would have to
That's true.
do it correctly.
Tanya, didn't we also discuss that if you do have these original dwelling and another dwelling, they both have to be on permanent foundations?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how that all fits in here.
Well, there's different types of permanent foundations, though, as far as
So
the
there's
state's
There's
concerned.
some choices on foundational design and
Yeah.
stuff like that?
My question to the CID is, how much more expensive is it to add on to a manufactured home as opposed to a stick-built?
I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. We don't deal with.
Is the engineering a lot more rigorous?
Well, we wouldn't require, for residential, we wouldn't necessarily require engineering unless, when it goes in a plan review, if there's like a red flag or something that they question,
Right.
then they might kick it back and say, well, we want to get a stamp or seal from a design professional on this.
But you might do the same thing for a stick-built home.
Exactly.
What's their plans?
Yeah.
So in terms of just the manufactured home, if I wanted to put a second one on there, does that actually go through CID? If I want to put a second one on
Yeah,
there?
it would go, manufacturer would go through the mobile home division then.
Okay. And they would basically go through the same process in terms of trying to see if it makes sense, if it's going to fit, if there's going to be any issues, safety issues, so on and so forth.
And see, those are all things that these regulating agencies look at. But the task before you guys is to figure out how to fix the zoning ordinance so that it gets caught there
Right.
and processed in tandem with these guys, so it can either be done right or not done at all.
No matter which zone it's in.
So in terms of the size that you can actually put on the property, would the regular CID look at the size of the property and restrict it based off of everything that's there?
Well, in the case of like Edgewood, it would go, through planning and zoning for setbacks and meet your requirements.
Yeah.
The permit for the structure itself then would go through review at CID.
Okay. But the structure, would you limit the size at all, or are there times when you would limit the size of the structure?
Well, we have an appendix in the New Mexico Administrative Code now that's addressing tiny houses. I should probably get you a copy of that if you haven't got it. I think that went into effect, they put it in back in, I think, February.
Okay.
So I just got an updated copy of it, and I think we're at 450 feet for a tiny house in my state.
Closets.
Yeah, you live in a closet.
Closet with a bunk bed.
So let me ask you this, when you were reading through, any of you, jump in whenever, when you were reading through the proposed changes, what was the most alarming thing where you're like, yeah, that's not gonna work? Did that ever jump out at you? It did. Go ahead and say.
Well, again, as I said, the concern on our part is where it talks about the fact that a secondary dwelling would be allowed if it can tie into the existing septic system, and our answer is no,
Okay.
and then maybe. Upfront, no, maybe once we review the proposal to see, based on lot size and conditions and the structure they're talking about. We'll never not take an application.
Right.
Yeah.
But then we're gonna review it based on the regulation and on existing conditions to make the determination on whether what's being proposed is doable or not.
So we kind of have to have, when we're, instead of stating it that way, we have to say, if it meets the criteria of the environmental department,
Well, I
And
think
it's
you,
still to
I
be
think
a
you need to
conditional.
specifically say
Specifically
that
say.
any changes, that any liquid waste system changes, modifications, or installations must
must.
be permitted through the New Mexico Environment Department, because if, people are people,
Yeah.
if you tell them, well, it just needs to meet the requirements, I can go get a copy of this regulation, and I can put a system in that meets the requirement, but it's not permitted,
Right.
and that's a different animal.
Yeah.
So what needs to happen on a mobile home, okay, so first, there needs to be like an inspection of it, okay? And you need to determine where the drain field and stuff is, the original drain field, so the new mobile home or the additional mobile home and stuff like this is not installed on top of the old drain field.
That's true.
So at that point in time, when these guys go to make the determination, that's probably one thing they're gonna look at, but they may miss it. So it ought to be exposed and actually find where that drain field is, so that mobile home, so our code says 8 feet per structure to a drain field, okay? And they can't pull the mobile home over the septic system either, so that's 5 foot, 5 foot setback. So at that point in time, them two right there dictate that you can't have nothing on top of one, the drain field, or two, the septic tank. Find a lot of that, they've added porches on top of it and stuff like that, even, bedrooms. okay, that's on top of the septic tank. That's not allowed. So it needs a thorough inspection and see where it's at, and then they'd have to come in for the modification if they go to one bedroom. If they go to kitchen sink, toilet and all that, then they can still come in. It's a modification, but at that point in time, it has to be an advanced treatment. So then that's gonna have to change based on, but that all has to do with lot size. But you need to have an inspection for where they plan on doing all this, so it meets the setbacks to the code.
Okay.
The conditional use sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I think so
What Gene
too.
said is correct, because that's really important. And that would be helpful when you review plans, that they specify and have exactly where that system is at, because I've caught them. I've got one down in Los Lunas. He was gonna build a structure right over his septic tank, and he had an architect draw the plans. I called the architect, and the architect says, "What septic tank?" And I said, "They're proposing to build it right over the system." And it never was built. They backed off. So it happens.
Okay.
But if you have a permit though, right, through CID and checks all that, correct?
Well, no, in this case, he had a permit, he had
Oh, okay.
everything. And I don't know if, when Valencia County reviewed it, if they didn't pick up on it, but he actually called in for a footing inspection. I got there and I started looking around a little bit, and I said, "What's this?" He said, "Well, that's my septic tank." Well, he's gonna build a whole structure over it.
Oh, my gosh.
Unfortunately, he had an architect, because when I called him off guard, and they went back to the drawing board, and I guess they shelved it because it was never built.
Very helpful.
It seems like if we're gonna do this, and the first thing that they should even come with is that, well, I guess a plot that says where their septic tank is, but then they need to go to the environmental people to see if they'll, what they will allow on that piece
Yeah.
of land before it even would come to us. You know,
So
because we
when-
could approve it, but then it really doesn't meet the requirements.
Right. So you guys, when they go to you, you guys do an inspection report and you have it all laid out whether, yeah, this is gonna work or this is not gonna work?
So typically what happens is they'll come to us, or they'll hire a contractor to come to us and fill out an application to construct, okay? Modification permit, all right? And they're gonna turn that in. It's required that they have ownership documents and site plans and everything like that. They're supposed to identify where the existing system is. If there's no permit on the system, then that can trigger us to go out and confirm what's going on. But generally, our first step is to take the documentation they give us and do a plan review and look at it to make sure that it's meeting setbacks and things like that, okay? And then typically, this is gonna be done by a contractor. Once we sign off the construction, the contractor's gonna go out and build the system, and then we're gonna come out and inspect it to make sure that it was, number one, built to the design that we approved, and number two, that it's meeting setbacks and everything else.
Okay, that's correct, okay, but they also gotta meet setbacks to the water line. So we got a 10-foot setback from the septic tank to the potable water line. And so anything before 2005, unless they look where the weeds are growing, if there's any weeds growing, they won't know where the leach field is because there's no inspection ports or anything like that. After 2005, we got the requirement in the reg that all drain fields have to have inspection ports on them. So before 2005, something put in 1980, you're not gonna know where exactly that drain field is because there's nowhere to actually, until you get out there and dig or something, you gotta find it to know where exactly it all goes. From there, as I've told people there in the town, you need to GPS it so you have a permanent record of where that stuff is. But you have to keep also that 10-foot setback from the water line. It's for potable water.
Okay.
So what would be the proper sequence here? somebody comes and sees Tanya and they want to stick the secondary quarters on. What does she need to do that triggers EID and/or CID to get the sequence in order?
She needs to hand them a piece of paper that says you ought to contact the environment department to see if they got a permit of
The
record.
town asked for a septic inspection
Yeah. But they
before
also,
they consider anything else
or a
by a certified or licensed contractor that does inspection.
right, but they also ought to have a copy of their permit of record.
From EID.
Right,
Okay. So start out with the copy of that permit from EID.
right.
In a lot of counties, that's exactly what they do. When somebody wants to build a home or move a home, they've got a form that they actually give them with all the people they need to contact, and one of them is us. And
What counties
typically,
do that?
Valencia County does that, Sandoval County does
Does
that.
Doña County do that?
You know, I can't speak to Doña County, I think they do, it's pretty common.
Yeah.
And the whole issue is, they want the whole situation with the septic addressed up front.
Yeah.
Now, and a lot of times, we will issue the construction permit, but the system's not built until other things occur on the lot. Once we issue that permit to construct, it's good for a year. And so, but what they want to do is they want to see that this person has a permit in hand that's been approved to put on the septic system that they're proposing before they'll let them do anything else with it. So it's fairly common
Okay.
to go down that path.
Torrance County is one example, which I know you all deal with. They require a copy of a septic permit before they'll issue the manufactured home permit or anything like that, so.
Okay. All right. So are we in agreement that our wording needs to go strictly under conditional use and not permissive for secondary quarters? Are we going to keep it with attached?
That's what I'm wondering. Does it make a difference that, living and sleeping
Yeah.
in an attached, what is that? Is that a different animal than separate? Does it necessarily involve a kitchen, or does it involve, a bathroom and
Well, the
bedroom?
way your ordinance is written right now, you're proposing it has a second kitchen, correct?
Well, the way it's written before we did any changes,
Well, I mean,
you
the
could have a
proposed
full-blown
change-
house.
What?
The way it was written before we changed it, anything was allowed. I mean, you could have a 2,000 square foot homes on there, and it's like, okay,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah, that was
just-
one of the questions that Ray and I were talking about is, why attached and not detached?
Yeah, we haven't seen that as much before.
So the ones that you've seen before, it could be either or, is that what you're saying, or?
Hasn't really come up, it's usually detached.
Yeah, usually.
Oh, it's usually detached.
A casita, in other words.
Yeah.
Right.
A separate other building.
I attended a P and Z meeting before I was here on P and Z that went kind of circular that way, that, when you're talking about attached, you come back to, well, how's that different than adding a bedroom onto your house?
Right.
A bedroom and a bathroom.
The kitchen.
Tanya, one thing you want to be aware of too, because just, there again, I could use Los Lunas as an example. If somebody brings in plans, you want to make sure they're accurate on what they're specifying on there. The example is down there in Valencia County, on the north end of Los Lunas, there was someone that submitted for an addition. I had my state plans, but when you looked at them, after he got the project going, I realized that he didn't indicate what those rooms really were. They missed a couple inspections, and I got curious, and I went over there and started looking around, and I walked in. I said, well, this is gonna be a kitchen, this is a bathroom, this is gonna be a bedroom. None of that was indicated on the plans. So what they were attempting to do was get this through as an addition, not a duplex. So all the red flags went up. I was on the phone with the county. The county came over. They claimed they only signed off on a garage. And I said, well, I said, the plans match the structure that's built, but they didn't indicate the rooms right. So you want to kind of be careful of that too. If somebody tries to turn something in that they're calling an addition, but really it's a whole new living quarters.
Okay.
I'll say it so.
And from the liquid waste standpoint, if there's two separate kitchens, two separate entrances,
Right,
it's two separate dwellings.
right.
Right.
So we're gonna size it as a main house with maybe a 3-bedroom and then a 1-bedroom house,
Right.
even if it's attached or detached. It doesn't matter if it's basically two separate dwellings, whether they're detached or attached. So
I think we should take the attached out probably, and it wouldn't matter.
So I got one thing on that garage deal. Okay, so if they ever have floor drains in the garage, if they bring you a set of plans, that should never be run into an on-site liquid waste system. Okay, because that's dirt and grease and oil that we don't need into the sewage system. So that has to go, if they're gonna propose floor drains, it needs to go somewhere else, not tied into the sewer system.
Okay.
Okay, we have a question also. What municipalities do you know that has mother-in-law quarters addressed in their ordinances as well?
Still accessory,
Basically, just like the same question that
Yeah.
we were asking about counties, but in the
Right.
municipalities themselves. I know Santa Fe has one that they talked about at one of the meetings, but I don't know if anybody else.
Yeah, no, a lot of them. There are a lot in Albuquerque. I'm not sure if they are currently technically allowed.
Right.
There are a bajillion of them that are grandfathered in.
And are they pretty much the same as like what we're talking here, or are they completely off the wall in different regulations and stuff?
No, it's about the same stuff. I can send Tanya some, just looking through a HUD document and an AARP document that kind of breaks down some different regulations from different municipalities about secondary dwelling units. But it's nothing totally different. The things that mainly come up are septic, parking, fire safety, nuisance, and the neighborhood character. So, septic, you guys have off-street parking addressed, fire safety would be addressed. For nuisance, some cities have it mandated that the owner has to live in one of the dwelling units. So it can't be two rented out properties to different people. That means someone's accountable. And, if someone's living in your backyard or vice versa, you probably don't want them to be a nuisance in your home. So detached, attached, same thing, they're on your property. So a lot of municipalities mandate that. And then for neighborhood character, sometimes they have site triangles and things, or
or size, or they limit the
size
size of the
limit,
casita, yeah.
either the square footage or the coverage of the lot.
Yeah.
I think we still need to have the square footage be 850 square feet.
You can live, yeah. You can live there.
Yeah.
I wondered, reading this all through, mulling it over, about ingress and egress too. that
Right.
Because things evolve over time, you may build a structure like this for one purpose, and then, have your young adult son and a friend living in it, and then a few years later, it's a daycare. And is that ever addressed? I looked around a little bit, and it seems like most ordinances I found are silent.
Well, and you could have them do an easement, right-of-way easement to if the house, the smaller house in the back or something. You could have that platted out so that you have an easement set up so it's not obstructive.
But if they do something like daycare and stuff like that, that has to come back to
Right.
the
Right.
environment
Yeah.
department.
Well, that's a conditional use under here anyway, right? So, I mean, the person now has the
Yeah.
structure and says, now I want to use it a different
Right.
way. But I wondered if there's any kind of precedent for how people access that second structure.
Well, typically it's,
Usually it's the same shared.
yeah, shared
Shared
driveway,
driveway.
and you could have them, if you're concerned about them, because you can't landlock.
Right.
So you could have them put a right-of-way easement, have that surveyed, and Put it on the plat.
But you may want to
You don't have
consider roadway access, so
Yeah.
Right.
maybe, it's a separate driveway that goes back into the primary driveway.
Right, I wondered, I don't know what's safer, to have our ordinance be silent on that, since all of this will be conditional use anyway, or to actually specify it up front. I've actually known a place that had a casita, it was in California, that became, it was built for a young adult, and then it became a B&B. So,
So in that case, you get a change of occupancy,
right,
and it should go back and be permitted.
yeah, so I don't know if our ordinance needs to have language in there at all, or maybe something specifying easements.
Do you require like 2 parking spaces on site? Do you have that specific?
We don't have that specific for residential now.
I got a question, well, Mike's here. Up there off of Broken Arrow, there's a guy there that's got a garage. And he's thinking about building an addition in there for a daughter to live inside of it. Okay? So he's got floor drains in there also, so he wants to tie that into the septic system. Where would he ever come into getting a permit? As long as he's building it inside the garage. I told him you can't do that. I said, you can't be doing floor drains into a septic system over here and all this stuff, but
He's required to apply and submit for a permit.
But there's nothing that would set an alarm off to get you over there, other than somebody seeing it, because it's inside the garage, it's already there.
I bet that goes on a lot.
It does too.
Well, and they get caught, I mean, because you have to, if you're gonna live in a garage, you've gotta bring it up to the residential code, right?
Yeah, right, there's exemptions for not having that.
There's
Get a
freaking
storage
other
shed and live in it.
The only way that would ever catch him on the liquid waste end of it, okay, he was like, right now, Rax is selling septic tanks, so he can go do all that and never get a permit. If he wants to sell the place at the time of transfer, that's when he would get caught on
That's
our
when he's
end.
gonna, right, that's when he's gonna get caught.
Rax is selling septic tanks.
Yeah.
Do it yourself.
That's super.
Then you're not getting a permit.
And they're the cheapest septic tank almost you can buy.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay. So, do we have enough information that we need in order to make any modifications to this?
I think so. You guys have any other questions?
Catch them now while they're here.
I think I gave all of you one of my business cards, so if there are other questions that come up, we'd be more than happy to help answer those and assist with it as it goes forward.
I would have a question for you. We have a planning department uses a TAC committee to review stuff sometimes. Would you environment guys be able to assist them on that TAC committee from time to time? If they had something that needed reviewed?
Yeah, informally, we would be happy to,
Could you
to
come
be a
out to a
resource.
meeting, or,
We potentially could do that, just like we're coming out to this, yeah.
in other words, contact you and say she's got one that needs an environment department, look at, and maybe you can come out and assist her in looking at it?
We'd be happy to do that, just keeping in mind that what we're gonna do is look at it in light of our regulation,
Right.
We don't do design work, but we certainly don't mind evaluating and talking about the potential options for something, so yeah, certainly.
Okay, great.
I have another question just came to mind. I've heard talk of things called gray water systems. They are not permitted by what I've heard tonight.
No, wrong.
Huh?
Wrong. You can have a gray water system.
Okay. What has to happen between the septic systems you described tonight and somebody having a gray water system?
Okay. So under our regulation, you can certainly have a gray water system. Let's specify what goes into a gray water system.
Okay. Yeah,
It's
that was one of my questions.
tub shower, laundry. Kitchen sink is considered black water, and obviously your toilets are black water. Now, under our regulation, you can split your flow to the gray water system, but you're still required to have a full-sized black water system regardless. So it's not gonna save anybody any money. You know, the system also has to be designed so that the gray water flows into a tank and is then pumped out within 24 hours for beneficial use, and it has to be sent subsurface, like through drip systems or whatever, to water ornamental trees, plants, bushes. You can't use it on your garden, any of that stuff. And the system's designed so that in the winter, when you can't use that gray water for beneficial use, that flow gets shunted back into the black water system, which is why you have to have a full-size black
That
water
sounds like
system.
you double the expense of the
Basically.
system.
And that would
But
probably
we can't
require-
outlaw that.
What's that?
As a community, we can't outlaw that?
Gray water systems?
Yeah.
If
Or
they
so
want-
it's not permitted, you know.
If they want right now, unless Edgewood outlaws it, they can have an outhouse out there.
Yep.
God.
That's the open
You
gray
can
water
be
system.
more restrictive,
Spread that.
but not less restrictive
Not less
than the state regulation.
Yeah, that's what
So,
I-
yeah, you could do that. You could.
But for your gray water system, it sounds like it would be best to design the plumbing in your facility so it diverges in the house or whatever before it ever gets outside.
Right, and we've seen that done. The unfortunate, and people always question why we are gonna require a full-size black water system. And we require that even if you have composting toilets or any of that kind of stuff. And it's because while you may enjoy using that system, when you sell the property to somebody else, they may not be quite as enthusiastic about the environment. And so the system has to be able to accommodate that full flow. There's no downsides allowed. You're not going to get around it. You have to have the black water system to accommodate your total design.
But the last part of that question is, do we need in this ordinance to address that issue or just do it through the permitting process? I didn't get a clear indication of what the city should be saying in its ordinance.
As far as
Probably
gray
what he
water.
said.
Yeah.
Conditional,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
assess it at that point.
And then if they want to propose it and bring it in, then it's going to go through our design
Conditional on the
process.
design and implementation of it, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's,
It's the easiest way to do it.
Okay.
And then you're not discriminating against any
then
kind of
do we
housing.
need dimensions in
Not
our
on issue.
ordinance?
Maybe we can visit that, yeah,
That's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, that makes sense.
So that same gray water, okay, that you're talking about, you can take the same septic water, okay, put 2 tanks in the ground, and as long as it's subsurface, you can water trees and everything with it.
Yeah,
Okay, so that, there's nothing prohibits you from doing that.
okay.
Excuse me, but you can't run the water directly onto your trees.
You
It has to
can't.
go into a tank.
Has to go into a tank and be subsurface. You can pump it out there all day long, as long as it's subsurface. Nothing to matter, as long as it's 6 inches underground, whatever, you can reuse it on any trees, on lawns, whatever, as long as it's subsurface and it don't surface.
And you don't use no vegetable gardens, right?
Right. And that's because that gray water, within 24 hours, suddenly becomes septic. There is enough organic matter and stuff in it that it deteriorates over time, so you gotta, which is why you don't want it ponding.
And you could, gray water, you could hold it for more than 24 hours, but then you have to disinfect it, so then you're adding something like chlorine to it, which then isn't beneficial for water.
that's too much.
I've never understood those
Tank full of water.
rules or rationale for a gray water system. Thank you.
All righty, any other questions?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you guys so much for coming. That was very helpful.
Illuminating.
Now, you're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like.
With all due respect, thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
We very much appreciate it. Thank you.
It's our pleasure.
We're making out that here.
Yes?
Subdivision. difficult and motion.
Next one's yours.
How very many people would really try it. Because
But that
once
permitting
they,
process would bring a lot of them right to their knees.
yeah, after they go make sure they got the septic tank first,
Yeah.
they probably, not many of them would even do it. But you can't finance either sometimes.
It doesn't matter if I do it in black or purple.
No, you can do whatever.
What's today, the 16th?
Yes, it is.
Great, thank you.
It's a problem of buying land and that is the rocks. And it's a beautiful location, but septic is in the red line really bad.
And across the road, where we had like 7 feet of Vado zone, and we have plenty of Vado zone.
What's that called? I hadn't heard that before.
Vado zone
Yes,
I
that's.
think you're not gonna get away with it, but
is unwet.
All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next agenda item here. So you guys ready? So the next item for discussion here is the mining section changes in the zoning ordinance. So staff, you want to go ahead and start us off with the discussion?
Basically, what we've done is just enclosed a rough draft of some ideas that we've had and stuff like that, so we'd like for you guys to be able to go through this, read through it, find any changes that you might want to add. Anything like that, this is, like I said, very much rough draft, so take the next couple of weeks to read through it, if you would, get back to us prior to the meeting, of course, and then we'll redline it and bring it back in front of the next meeting.
And compare it to what is in the book already under mining, which is only like this big. So,
You're being generous, it's like 3 sentences.
yeah. Yeah.
Michelle, may I ask a question?
Sure.
In your opinion, are there any added stuff to the mining ordinance that has this current or significant negative impact on the mining operations we have ongoing in the Edgewood area? Is this going to shut down all mining?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not. All this does is we have an application that they will fill out. We have some guidelines that, hours of, of working on operation type thing. But by no means is it going to shut anybody down, no.
I just wanted to have that in mind.
And as far as I know, right now, we don't have anybody in the town of Edgewood that is mining at this point, so.
But we have operations that might someday need mining.
Well, absolutely, but at least this gives us some kind of guidelines where we can monitor and at least see what they are doing and when they're doing it, how they're doing it, and that type of thing.
Okay, I was just curious, because I haven't read it yet.
Right, no, I understand that.
Now, the guidelines here that's listed, do they come from any other municipality or
I've got several that I've used.
pulled information from?
Yes, and I can
Okay.
forward those to you. I didn't put them in this,
No,
and
we
I
don't
do
need-
have them
I
at
don't
the
need it
office,
anyway.
but I can send you some different ones that I've looked at.
Okay. So we just need to review that and then come
Did you
back?
correct the time on everybody's?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I
There
think
was a correction made on one of the rough drafts. I was just
Yeah.
making sure
To
that
seven.
everybody's.
7, yeah, I
Yes.
thought 9 was too late.
No, and
So-
I don't know why you would even set that to begin with, and actually, I thought I had it at 5.
Yeah, and,
It might just be a typo.
I mean, we can change it to
And
5.
we can change it to 5 or whatever,
I thought summertime,
but
but,
summertime and stuff like that is gonna be longer hours. Usually it's just daylight hours.
Yeah.
Is one of the main concerns as well, so.
Can you just
But
specify
we can-
daylight hours?
We can specify any, that's why I say this is a
Okay.
rough draft, so
Okay.
if you guys have an idea, if you wanna do daylight hours or 7 o'clock, whichever one is latest, we can do it that way, however you see fit.
Okay. Any questions in regards to that?
Did you wanna say anything, or did you have any questions or
Yeah, I was
concerns?
just waiting for the public, if I can.
Sure, you betcha.
Is that okay? Yeah, Leon with Windmill Wall. The hours, restrictions of hours, I see here, 7 AM to 9 PM, and then it's changed maybe to 7. Quality of life, 7 o'clock at night? Really?
That's what we were just discussing just
Yeah,
now.
right. 7 o'clock, that's not quality of life. I mean, let's end it. Why can't we end on where it was before, when the county was, through the county?
This is not for blasting, sir.
No, I know
Okay.
that. But just hours of operation. Just, it says hours of operation. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Daylight hours, would that be sufficient, or are you wanting like a strict shutdown at 5?
Well, what did we have before? They had hours of operation, if I stand corrected, at 5 o'clock, and that was everything. I'm not just saying blasting.
Actually, under our mining ordinance, I don't think there is a time stipulation.
Under
No, there
ours,
isn't. Page 51 in our current,
Is there a time?
no.
Yeah. So we're actually regulating a little bit more than what's in there right now. As of right now, they can mine all night long if they'd like to.
That's quality of life.
Well, no, that's what we're just saying right now, is that's what we currently
Yeah,
have, is no regulation. So that's what we're trying to, yeah.
Yes, okay.
Tried to correct it.
Um,
It may ought to line up with the
With the blasting, which is daylight hours, right? Or did we
I
do
believe
5?
it's, actually, I think it goes to 7 as well, doesn't it?
I thought it did, but.
I didn't bring it with me.
You're also referring to truck traffic in and out and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's up to you guys, what you guys want to.
And I think there too, I mean, we could always visit the idea of where this operation is at. I mean, we have businesses in town that's 24 hours. It depends on the person's quality of life. Your quality of life may start at 5 o'clock at night, mine might not even get going till midnight. That depends on the person himself. We cannot regulate everything compared to what one person's quality of life hours may be.
Okay, so we'll look at that and then provide any feedback.
Perfect. And if you guys will, like I said, if you guys will just email me, by the end of the week prior to the meeting, and then that way we can kind of do the changes up for the next one.
Okay. Okay, next item on the agenda is a discussion on road surfacing priority list. So staff, you want to go ahead and start us out?
So in there, I put a little outline of what was included in this portion of your packet. A copy of the road paving recommendations from 2012 that is written by the commission. I wanted you to look over that and see, what you thought should stay, and of course, updated it, but if you thought that we needed, the same type of language, like the executive summary and methodology and things like that, if you thought that it needed to stay. And then a copy of the resolution 2012-01. An updated list of roads to consider for resurfacing, and a copy of Commissioner Barrett's recommendation. That was the only one that I received. So I wanted you guys to see that again. And I just, I kind of wanted to hear what you guys thought, and then that way I can take it back and work on it, and then maybe the next meeting, we can take another stab at it, and then the meeting after that, we should be able to be ready to send it, is my hope.
Okay.
We don't have Church Street on here anywhere. I keep bringing Church Street
That was
up.
my first thought, the elephant in the room.
But it's on this other thing from the state money, and I don't know how these two come together. I don't know if everyone's familiar with this state money thing. I got quite some time ago. Are you
So the
familiar with
updated
this
list?
thing? It's, I forget what this, it's got some term, I don't know what it's called.
Is it the ICIP?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it's called. Let me write that down.
Infrastructure capital improvement.
Yeah, so this is what, this one was the one that I had given you before, where we had moved all the ones up, basically, from the ones that were done or the ones that were already in the works with the ICIP money. So
Okay, where is-
these are the,
Do I have a copy of that?
What page is
it was in your packet. It's the, next to the last page. It was right before Mr. Barrett's
This one.
recommendation, yeah. So these were just listed here, and then, you know, take the following factors in consideration when deciding the order of priority on these. So that's basically what we need to do, is figure out the order of priority. And then what you want our report to say that's going to be going to town council.
I have something in my stuff that talks about how often they're bladed, and how much maintenance they receive. I think we need to look at that in our decision. Let's see if I can find it. Let's get into it.
This,
Oh, yeah, this. Is that the same as what she's given us?
I didn't put that one in there, what you're holding there.
yeah, it's got
the
the same
same thing?
information, the weekly, you know,
Yeah.
every 2 to 5.
And that, yeah, and that one was an old one. That was what
Okay.
was in,
I was gonna say, I think Norman said that he needed to come up with a new schedule because with the annexations and stuff, everything has changed.
Sure.
So I'm sure none of that maintenance, what is reported on that is gonna be accurate at this
You want
point.
to hear from him before you write up your report.
Right.
I think it'd be good to know how much maintenance, how much it's costing the town to maintain which roads, because if it's really costing a lot of money,
Well, and we can invite him to be here at the next meeting as well and get his input on all the roads and which ones and, you know, what's gonna be a burden on him, which ones he's having to go out and maintain all the time due to traffic or whatever.
I don't mind saying right up front that I would like to see church on the list, and I
Church is on
understand
the
it's,
list, I believe, is it?
It
Well,
is East Church.
Church Street.
I know it's potentially really expensive. Right now, it's concave, rather than having any kind of a crown on it. But, you know, when I think of roads around town in terms of number of trips, number of people who live on
I was
that
gonna say,
road,
if it's
dust.
become a main road.
Well, it has, and I also think about emergency access in and out of town, that you suddenly have that torturous mile between where the pavement ends and where the pavement starts again.
right.
And, you know, I would like to, everyone says that that's prohibitively expensive to do that road, but I guess I'd like to know the number going into this, if somebody could get a handle on it.
Well, and if you're ever down there, I was just driving down there today, and all of a sudden this car flew by me, and, I mean, they're still driving like it's pavement. Rocks are flying everywhere, and
Well,
it's, I mean, it's
There's a
messed up.
prevailing theory in town that if you go fast enough,
You're
you'll
just
go
gonna
from
skip over
bump to
it.
bump.
It works.
You drive with determination, Mr. Mayor, so I've heard.
never bought that one. Well,
Okay, I will ask Juan about the cost for that one.
Might even ask him to ask Horrocks if they have any ideas on it, because they're doing the design on it.
Okay.
Do we know what the budget is going to be? Are we working against the budget?
I am not sure, but I can find that out too. We can have Juan come and talk to you guys if you want.
Yeah,
We can have,
I
for the
think that's
next,
a good idea.
what's,
the next meeting, we can have Juan and Norton here.
I had a little time today, so I checked at the town website, and I said, well, I want to look at the budget, because, but it's not there. And click on the link.
It's not there.
Would be nice, I think, that way gives us an idea what money is really available.
Okay.
but the other consideration that came to mind for me in looking at this list, I realize that West Venus is important. That it's a connecting road, it's in bad shape, and, you know, the school buses use it.
Right.
But I also recall a subdivision proposal from a number of years ago where one of the negotiated arrangements was paving West Venus in the event that that subdivision was approved, which it was. So I guess I have a certain reluctance to spend our money on something that it might be feasible to do it some other
West Venus
way.
or East Venus?
West.
Where are we?
Stone Mountain?
344.
Were you talking about the Stone Mountain subdivision?
I don't recall the name of it. I
The
do.
one that was the spin cycle on the zoning that never got zoned as far as I know.
I think it was stuck in R2, wasn't it?
Yeah, there were some, but you're talking about the subdivision that was up past what, on West Venus?
No,
Okay.
no, I'll have to resurrect it, but I thought there was a proposal to pave that section
There was.
that we're concerned about now.
There was some talk about that when Stone Mountain was being,
There was more on the east side though, that
right,
being the condition for Hillcrest.
well, yeah, but this goes back to,
This is a gentleman whose name I'm blanking on, who's associated with Thunder Mountain Water.
Ed,
Yeah, was proposing,
it was Stone Mountain.
yeah,
Estates.
yeah, okay, then we're
Yeah.
thinking about the same
And
thing.
there was some talk at that time about having, do it, as far as I know.
It didn't go anywhere?
that's been dead before.
Okay. Then we'll have to think about it ourselves
Yeah.
anyway.
You know, I think in terms of just the information that would be useful, and for me anyway, is having a budget and what things we're looking, you know, what we can do, what's possible. And what would be good is that if Juan, I guess, is the, and who's the other person that does the maintenance, Norton? or-
Norton.
Okay, if they could kind of get together and say, here's kind of what we recommend, right? So this would be the most optimal use of the budget, and at the same time, it would take care of any maintenance, and this is kind of what we recommend, and then go from there, right? And maybe they have a couple of options that's going to be, because I think the concern without the budget information is that if we sit here and say, we recommend these things in this first 5 order, but now, because we're not looking at the budget, you got 200K that's going to sit there forever, right, until you get your next bundle of money, whereas Juan could have sat there and said, okay, we could have also got these then, and if we had done it right.
Right, okay, I see what you're saying. Sure,
Request.
okay.
And I had raised a question, and maybe Juan can do this, of kind of parsing this out, asphalt versus chip seal versus, and I don't know if this is possible under ICIP money, just drainage improvement, with an eye toward resurfacing maybe the following year.
Right.
Even if it's not possible to use state money that way, it might be a good thing to do to kind of prioritize the roads, not just in terms of resurface, yes or no, and what'll it cost, but what kind of surfacing or what kind of preparation for
Okay.
surfacing.
It'd probably be good to have both Juan and Norton in here at the same time
Yeah.
then for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Do this again.
Yeah, that was good. Okay. All right, we'll sit now. Are you here the May 7th?
No, I'm at the beach.
That's right.
Oh, May 7th.
So,
Are you
21st.
gonna at least call in
I
on the
realize
phone?
I can't.
Oh,
be here
absolutely.
You're not here on the 7th either?
either. I've got a graduation meeting to go
So
Okay.
do I.
to. Maybe
All right,
we
so we will-
change the date of that meeting.
I was gonna say, it might be better just reschedule that one,
Yeah,
because that's 3 right off the bat.
Who's here on the 21st?
I'm here on the
I should be
21st.
here then.
Mr. Lee, are you here on the 21st of May?
No,
Victoria Day.
But if you want to have it
I'll
different
be
night.
in South Germany.
Okay. All right, well, we'll
I'll
have,
have a beer for you, though.
thank you.
Would you have 2 for me, please? 2 for me.
But if we want to meet a different night that week, you know.
Yeah.
Calendars, figure it out.
How long are you gone, Lorenzo?
Oh, I'll be back
7th
by the
is on a night
13th.
He's gone.
Just a week, so. But then Jim's gone, right?
Yeah.
When do you leave, Mr. Lee? I leave the 10th of May and get back the 29th.
All right, so,
He's gone on something.
all right, we'll have an extra commissioner probably. So.
Good.
Yeah, we will. So, well, I'll email you all on that, and we'll see what we can work out. And I'll talk to Juan and Norton, and I'll coordinate
Okay.
it all and let you guys know.
Okay.
Okay.
If you're trying to coordinate, you may want to use text. Try to get a faster response.
Yes. But I, yep.
I think if any of us have the time to go drive some of these roads before we meet would be good. I did that, I went and drove all the roads. Only one I can't find is Steeplechase. I'm gonna have to look at the map or something.
That's on the.
Wasn't where I
off
thought,
of,
it wasn't where I thought it was,
Site visits.
Yeah,
so.
it's on the south side.
I know it's on the south side, but where I thought it was, I
Yeah.
never saw it. I was like, "God, something's wrong."
Okay. Anything else on that one?
No,
Okay.
got some more work to do.
Next agenda item is public comments. And Mr. Richter, we got one.
Yes, I'm still on my last.
Okay.
Can
You betcha.
Yeah, thank you for your time. I'm just looking at, the purpose of this ordinance is adopted for those purposes set forth to provide for and protect the public health, safety, and general welfare of the town of Edgewood, quality of life, public health. Now this goes to the National Ambient Air Quality Standard by the New Mexico ED out of Santa Fe. The contractor on May 1st, 2013, the crushing was closed, and if he was going to get, it is invalid, if he was going to get a new permit license, there has to be new modeling done. There are two types of modeling, or two types of permits. A general construction permit, no one can take a general construction permit as requires a quarter-mile setback to the nearest structure that's occupied by a permit. It does not meet the requirements. Or there's a regular construction permit. Either way, modeling would have to be done. Now this is for the ambient air quality. It has no expiration date, so it's passed from owner to owner. That contractor on that date let that permit expire. It does not go to the landowner. He probably doesn't know anything about it. Now it's closed. It's a very old permit, and it did not have good provisions to protect the environment at that time. New homes on the South Ridge would have to be taken into account. Ambient air quality have to be qualified for residences being that close. This really pertains to the crushing part of it. We have the blasting part of it. But now, they can blast all they want, but they're gonna have to take their stuff off until they get a new permit.
So are you talking about the quarry? Is that what you're
That's
talking
correct.
about?
About the quarry. It's under the National Ambient Air Quality Standard. That permit has expired. New modeling has to be done. Ambient air quality would have to be qualified for the residents. It would be hard to get, but not impossible. Much more stringent requirements are required now from when the original permit was issued years ago to where it was passed on from operator to operator to operator to operator. Now it's closed. And how they have been mining, they have no new permit that has come up. No one has done any new modeling. For this reason is our home has been excluded in the modeling that was done. So there's no new modeling, there's no new permit for whoever goes in there. It has to be done from the beginning. And that's through NMED in Santa Fe. The permit was closed on May 1st of 2013 because they failed to pay fines. They can reapply. Like I said, the landowner probably doesn't know because the letter goes to the permit owner, whoever owns the permit itself. So with that, I go right to the dust. It says, no mining activity shall be conducted within the town so to cause dust from the site involved to be blowing into adjoining land in greater quantities than if the land had been left in its natural condition. I'm just verbatim. Really? That means no mining. Because anytime there's any dust, it says, cause dust from the site involved to be blowing into adjoining no mining activities. That means mining activities, that's also including crushing, greater quantities than if the land had been left in its natural condition. That's what I'm reading.
But there's obviously more than just stopping mining solutions to that. You put up walls.
Yes, that was my next.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my next thing. And also, there have been walls that have been used for mining around the perimeter, so it does not affect the quality of life that, for those people that live there. Walls, like they do for oil fields, very similar. The walls go up 20, 30, 60 feet around that, so it's protected there. As we're talking, at Eubank and I-40, on the southwest corner, there is a well being serviced there. On the south end of that well, they have a wall up to protect the quality of life on the south end of that golf course.
What is it made out of?
You know, I've seen it made out of straw bales or hay bales. I've seen it made out of concrete. You know, I guess it's whoever's, this one here at Eubank and I-40 on the southwest corner, it's a huge wall that goes up. So it protects any noise, anything from that. Then it's a water well they're servicing.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be a wall with great strength.
Oh, correct.
You
Oh,
know,
of course. Yeah.
It just has to have an absorption function, some kind of absorption function.
Correct.
So there's probably a lot of materials one could think about.
Yeah, exactly. And I saw hay bales or straw bales, like these huge ones, that, panels, just to absorb it.
Or you could have a rock wall.
Yeah.
So let me just make sure, let me clarify some things here just to make sure I understand. So the first thing you had talked about, you know, you started talking about ambient air quality, that kind of thing. And were you saying that the quarry's currently operating without a permit?
It's not operating right now.
Okay.
No,
Okay. So it's not operating now?
correct.
Okay, but before it could operate again, it would need a permit is what you're saying?
Yes, it needs a modeling to what they do. They figure out on how much tonnage is going to be taken out of that pit. And there's a perimeter to where they have to see what the air quality is going to be by those people living in that area.
Okay. Are you also suggesting that with the mining ordinance section that we're going to be looking at, that, and I'm not sure if you could do this or not, but something should be in there related to air quality and
Most
maintaining that? Okay.
Most certainly.
Okay.
And
It has expired. I'm sorry.
not only the mining, but the blasting.
Yeah, blasting as well as mining. I mean, sure, okay, now it's approved that they can blast. If you don't have an air quality permit, how are you going to be allowed to crush? If it's under the NMED and Santa Fe, the air quality bureau. That's a huge thing. I mean, that's quality of life is how I see it. And then, if I may, the reclamation. If I stand corrected, reclamation, there's already something in place that there should have been reclamation already. As a certain division is done in the mining quarry, it's reclamated. It never has been. Why are we allowing, no, finish your reclamation that should have been done years ago. Now we're gonna start, and you just put a generic, oh, when it's all done, well then clean it all up. Why not as we go? Sections as we go that, okay, that section's done, reclaim it. This section's done, reclaim it. This section, that's been in place in the county for years. Nothing's been reclaimed. So those are my questions.
Okay.
Which came first, the houses or the pit? The quarry?
The pit was there first.
That plays on this too.
What's that?
I think that's an effect we have to think about.
Absolutely.
Right, absolutely.
If I may, looking at, the ordinance that we're proposing, the section on permit application, it starts to sound almost like what we were talking about in the zoning ordinance. Should having the person show their NMED permit?
Well, you know what, we had
Part of
even
that
talked
process.
about the air quality and testing and all of that. The thing is we didn't want to get involved in that
Right.
because we do not test that. I
Right.
have no way to test the air quality. We depend on the state that
Environmental.
comes in
But
and
it sounds
does
like if
that.
NMED does, then we can certainly ask to see that.
See, and I'd
that
have to go
permit.
through the file and stuff because they were able to, and they have NMED's permit on file, so I'd have to go back and look through my
Yeah.
file and stuff because I wasn't prepared for any of this, so I don't
No,
know. if it's
and I don't
valid
mean,
or not.
I don't mean specifically for this
Right.
case, but going forward,
Right.
as we craft this
Absolutely,
ordinance, we
they
want
have
it to
to,
cover
uh,
things like this so that we don't have this problem
And I
in the
don't know if it's
future.
in this one or if my mind started to get boggled between the two, between the blasting and the mining. And if it's not, I'll have to read through this and see, but during the application part of it, they're supposed to bring in all permits
Yeah.
and certifications and all of that kind of stuff with them.
Okay.
But I'll have to make sure that this is on there. If it's not, then what I'll do is I'll add it in and I will email that out to you.
Okay, Mr. Richter?
If I stand corrected, should not the crushing also be included in this as well as the blasting? That should,
In the mining section?
sure, because that's part of my,
No, the blasting ordinance is a standalone ordinance.
the blasting ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then back to the dust issue. No mining activity shall be conducted within the town so as to cause dust from the site involved to be blown into adjoining land is in greater quantities than if the land had been left in its natural condition. When that blasting, there is,
Okay, this is mining.
yeah, mining, that's
Okay,
mining. Blasting.
no, blasting and mining are gonna be two separate issues. That's why we have two standalone ordinances. Mining is not going to be blasting.
That's actually part of the zoning. What we have in the zoning ordinance right now is, like she said, literally like 3 sentences.
Okay.
And there's really not much regulation going on, and so this beefs it up quite a bit.
And if you look under definitions, under mining activity, it tells you exactly what mining is. It has nothing to do with blasting. It is removing dirt.
Okay.
So anytime, so just to make sure I understand kind of the sequence of things, so I blast, I make rocks, and so now I'm gonna start removing some of this stuff away. At that point, I'm mining, correct?
I guess
Well,
you would consider
I
it
guess
that
you
way.
would consider it
I don't know how
mining.
you would consider it then like that. I mean, a quarry is completely different from what a mining site is.
Yeah.
So we didn't address this when we did the blasting ordinance,
As
No,
far
we were
as
just-
removing the rock and stuff,
the dust.
well, we
No,
did
there's
because
there's
we,
dust.
I believe what
I
it's
need to go
stipulated,
read it
and I'm
again.
sorry, I didn't bring my blasting ordinance with me. I
Yeah,
wasn't
I just-
planning on that part tonight. Because we had stipulated that there must be a water truck and that
Yeah.
type thing.
Okay,
So if the
okay.
dust
So it
is
is
overwhelming,
addressed.
Yeah.
then
It
that
was
the
in
water
there.
truck is being used and that type thing. So we did address it,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
But I mean, then again, in the state of New Mexico, and especially Edgewood, on a windy day, and you don't have grass in your front yard, you could have a whole brownout. We just had one just right down the road last week. At 70 miles an hour, it doesn't matter if you're mining or whatever, you're gonna have dirt blowing.
I know.
So, what natural state, what we're saying is take responsibility. If you are mining and you're stirring up a lot of dirt, have the water trucks there, and if we need to add that in, or have water, whatever, misting, I don't know, depends on how large of a site we're talking. So, I mean, we can add that in as well if we need to.
Yeah, it's a really rough draft right now. Just wanted to kind of get it out
These
there.
are just some ideas that we've pulled from a lot, and I've added and taken out and added some more because we knew this battle was going to be coming, and so we tried to address the main issues that we could see coming, but nobody's ever going to be happy with that.
Now, for clarification, is it Mr. Richter?
Yes.
What the old ordinance that we're trying to improve upon, well, the section of the zoning ordinance, what it says is really 2 things, and both of them inadequate for your concern. One says, mines or quarrying shall have direct access to streets able to handle the trucks. And then it says, above-ground activities will be at least 2,460 feet from a lot line. That's it. That's
That's the whole
That's
ordinance.
it.
That's the section of the zoning ordinance that speaks to mining, and that's what this draft is attempting to improve.
Yeah.
So your input's really valuable in that, but please keep in mind it's nowhere near finished at this point.
Okay.
But we're trying to get away from, this
Nothing.
wasn't enough.
Yeah,
Not
not even
nearly.
close.
So,
Yeah.
With you saying 2,000 some feet, is that right, what you said?
mhm.
Okay, yeah. So what is the new ordinance from that
Well,
district?
that's what we're working on.
That's
right
what we're
now.
That's
working
all.
on.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
what, this whole new ordinance, I've just passed out a rough draft.
So we're
That's all it
gonna
is.
take
This is the
these
first
two
time we have it
sentences
put
out
in.
of here and have a separate ordinance
Right.
that does a better job of addressing the more
At least we'll have an
pervasive issues.
application where we know who is mining.
Ordinance, is it?
But blasting.
No,
No, it'll
it-
still-
it'll
Well,
just
it'll be a
be,
section.
It's just
yeah, in this
gonna
section, yeah.
exert that one. and-
So that's where the red line I was talking about will come in.
Yeah.
Basically, that will just be red, and then all the rest of
And
it's
this
still
will
going.
replace
Yeah,
those two sentences.
yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Anything else, sir? Admin Director, you good at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is matters from Chair and Commissioners. So the one thing I wanted to bring up was, we talked about changing the time and the day and all that good stuff. What was the feedback?
I never got to talk. There it is, there's the thumbs down. We were trying to get.
You're not
to-
here, so you haven't had a chance to talk to you yet.
Yeah. What I told them at the last meeting, you probably,
We don't remember why you were against that.
Because of the deadlines on the newspaper, correct?
yeah, because Renee would like to start coming to our meetings, and she can't on Mondays. And so we all kind of like Tuesdays, because Mondays are kind of a wreck for everybody. And so we were trying to see if Tuesdays would work. And is it still a thumbs, it's still a thumbs down.
Because in order to
Could
get
we
in the
not
paper.
post it in the other paper that doesn't go out until the following day?
Its publishing deadline though is Monday.
On both papers?
Well, on the Telegraph is. Leota will squeeze you in on Tuesday if you can get your stuff figured out here on Monday night and get it to her on Tuesday. She can get it in there on Tuesday, on Wednesday, the next Wednesday.
So you're going to the paper on Tuesdays with,
You can,
You can, yeah. I have it, yeah.
so it starts your notice that much quicker. You gotta wait a week before it comes out, before any notice starts.
She puts the paper to bed about 6 o'clock on Tuesday evening, most of the time.
So when you figure out something here, they can get it into her on Tuesday and she can get it published starting that Wednesday. Otherwise, you're waiting the whole next week before it appears.
Yeah. There's the answer.
All right, so I got my answer on that one. I just want to just do something different.
I couldn't remember what the reason was. Yeah, we know.
All right, so any other thoughts, sir?
I'm going to Clovis.
You're going to
Just
close
for an
it.
overnight to take in the meatiest part. I
That's
don't think
it.
anyone else could make it, but
Who else is?
Hmm?
Who else is?
I don't think anyone else is.
Why not?
Because it's not Hawaii?
but I'm going to go for I can't be away for 2 nights, but it's the meatiest part of the conference. And I'll bring back lots of good information, whatever I can find. I'll snatch some for everybody.
Okay. Anything
What
else?
was the dates of the thing, Clovis?
2nd through the 4th.
I'm going on vacation.
So you said. Just rubbing it in.
Right? Better bring back some Malaysian
right?
souvenirs for as much rubbing in.
Shell, something.
You going to Hawaii? Good.
No, just Florida.
Huh? I was going to say the child.
Okay.
All right, anything else? Okay, matters from staff.
Well, we already talked about the NMLZO. It is going to be on the 11th, but I guess nobody could go to that. And then Clovis. So I'll start talking about Angel Fire now.
Right?
That I'll consider.
Okay, okay. That's gonna be in September, so let's just
Got
start.
plenty of time to
yeah.
schedule it.
I expect all of you at Angel Fire.
Got a little time to plan ahead.
Is that for like the entire weekend?
It can be, but we're only paying up in, 2 nights.
That'll be a beautiful time of the year.
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait for that one.
September what?
I'm not sure. I'll know the dates for sure after this next
I
conference.
guess we could make it a criteria, they have to show up to close to get to go to Angel Fire.
That's a good idea.
If we have to suffer through close to get to Angel Fire, so do you. And next year's is Hawaii, so you have to make all 3 of them this year. No, I'm joking.
So,
No, if I know early enough, then I can work out something, but I
Yeah.
just need to know early.
okay, all right. We'll
It's the
find out
biggest
the
thing.
dates for sure. Other than that, just what we've been working on, I'm rewriting the sign ordinance. It's almost done. I just have to add in the sizes that we already had in there, because I don't really want to change that. I don't have a problem with that. So I'm going to be emailing that out, so you'll have plenty of time to read that. I'm also going to do the minutes right away, send those out, so you have plenty of time to read that before the packet goes out.
Can I ask a stupid question? Our brand new electronic city sign there, does it meet the sign requirements?
It does.
Just curious.
And they actually got a permit for it too.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Good. I like the sign a lot.
We don't play favorites with anybody.
First thing I said is, but they had one, did you get a permit for that? And then here comes Roger back there, I got to do it. So he had went through the whole thing with it, so it was awesome.
Okay.
That's it.
Anything else? Okay. So, did we talk about changing the next meeting? Because most people still have to be gone 5/7, right?
5/7 I can't make.
Nobody's gonna
Could
be-
make
Nobody's
it
gonna be
the,
over 5/7, so we can wait and just have one on the 21st. We'll just have, a pretty packed meeting. We don't have anything but ordinance rewrites right now. Everything else is, we don't have anything else coming in. But, on the calendar updates, we've got everything, saying action, action. So you can just cross that out and say discussion, discussion, because we're not ready for action yet on mining or residential zone changes. But, let me ask you this. That was pretty awesome, was it not? Did you guys like that?
Yeah, that was helpful.
I did too. So,
There's a lot to think about.
And you don't
Right.
think we'll be ready for an action for the residential zone changing with the
no, I
information that we
think
have?
we're gonna write it out, and then take a look at it, and then be ready in June for the action.
Okay.
But I think the idea of conditional use is great. I think that's the way to go.
Be very few people who can actually meet that,
Right.
actually.
Okay. So our next meeting is going to be 5/21, right?
Yes.
Unless we want to do it on a Tuesday.
We could try that.
Just for that week.
Yeah.
But you're gone on vacation anyway.
All right, so 5/21, 6 o'clock. Okay. Let's see. I think that's it.
That is all.
All right, so at that point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move we adjourn.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. We're done.